Welcome everyone. My name is Andrew and I'm an improvement facilitator from AROC for those of you who haven't met me. And the purposes of today is to take you for a bit of a tour through our recently released Inreach live dashboard. So just for reference, my background is clinical, but I want to acknowledge the work of our data team, particularly Andrew and Thomas, who have put a lot of hours into creating this dashboard and making it functional in the way that it is. As I mentioned earlier, today will be recorded and the recording will be available later on. Just to make sure we stick to time today, I'll kind of run through how each of the charts works and what they're explaining, and then I'm happy to stay on afterwards and take any questions that people might have throughout any part of the presentation. Well, to start off, I guess to access the dashboard, you'll need to be able to log in. So as you should be able to see now on my screen is the AROC Online Services, or commonly known as AOS login page. So to access the Inreach dashboard, you will need to have an AOS login, and your login will need to be linked to a facility that is collecting the AROC Inreach data collection. If you don't have a login, there is a link here just at the top, which will generate an email that will give you the information and the authorization that we require to help set that up for you. So that's the place to go to sort that out. But once you have a login and you're in, you'll see the tabs across the top here, and the reporting tab is where we want to go. So on the reporting tab, down and click on live reporting. And in here, you'll see there are a few different options. So there is the live rehab team dashboard. That's our inpatient dashboard that some of you may be familiar with. But the one we're looking at today is the live Inreach dashboard. And for those of you who are familiar with the inpatient dashboard, you will notice there are some similarities in some of the charts that we'll look at, but there are some important differences both in some of the functions of the way the dashboard works and of the analysis, which is specific to Inreach. So just to orientate you first to the screen here, down the left we have a filter bar. So the first one here, select report. If you have access to multiple Inreach facilities within AOS, this is where you can select which facility you would want to view. Then you can change how the data is presented. So at the moment it's defaulted to monthly, but we can also choose to select quarterly or yearly data as well. The next filter allows you to determine your start date. So, for instance, you may want to look at yearly data, but you may want to look at yearly data from a previous year, not necessarily the current year. So in here, you can select what month that you want the time frame to start from. At the moment, this is restricted to July 23 being the earliest start date you can have. And that's because on the 1st of July 23, we did change some of the options for the data items, which means the data before that is actually slightly different to the data since then. So at the moment, we have at least 12 months of data for those facilities who were collecting data back on the 1st of July, and maybe a little bit less for those who have come on since then. The next thing you can look is you can filter the charts that only look at certain impairment groups. So if you click on here, you can see that currently all the AROC impairment groups are selected, but you can deselect all of them and only select certain ones. Or if you just wanted to take off a few, you can also do that as well. And then once you've done, you just click the green button down there to confirm choices. And the last option here is to change the age group. So you can have all ages as the default, or you can look at under 65 or over 65. So let's just to sort of show you how this all works, let's just look at a neurological cohorts of stroke, brain, and neurological conditions that are under 65, and we'll look at the data over a quarterly time frame. So once I've changed these, you'll see that the apply filters box starts to just lightly pulse green to remind me to click apply filters, and then that will update all the charts we have over here on the right. And we'll get to these charts in a minute in terms of exactly what they're showing and what they mean. But just so we have a bit more data, let's go back and reset this to have all the data available. So for today's demonstration, you'll see here the report name is Anywhere Hospital. So this is just some dummy data or some fake data that's in the system to allow us to demonstrate it today, but it doesn't actually represent any particular hospital. So the filter bar is down the left, and then across the top, we've got 3 different tabs. So the moment we're viewing the overview tab, there's also an outcomes over time tab, and then lastly, a download reports tab. So if we go back to the overview tab, within this overview tab, we have 4 different charts. Those of you, again, who are familiar with the inpatient dashboard may recognise 3 of them. This one on the top right is unique to Inreach, but there's also some updated functions in the way that these charts work within the Inreach dashboard. So if we start here with the total number of episodes by impairment group, so this is currently just showing monthly data, how many episodes have been seen by the Inreach team over that particular month, and then the different colours represent the different impairment groups. If we hover over any particular group, we can drill down. So this is looking at we'll highlight the orthopaedic fractures, but it also shows us that you can see within that month both the numbers and the percentages for the different groups across that time period. At the moment, this data is looking at number, but on the top right here, we have some options that we can change the way the data is shown. So currently it's showing it by number. If we click on this little percentage icon, it will change the data now to show the same data, but showing it by proportion of the percentage of episodes for each of those impairment groups over time. The next one across, again, allows us to view the data in a table. You can sort of scroll through the different options there. And then lastly here, you can click on and you can download this table as a CSV file if you wanted to manipulate or use that data in any particular way that was relevant for you. But if we flick back onto just the by number chart, similar to the inpatient dashboard, we can also drill down in this data. So for instance, if we wanted to look at any particular month or any particular impairment group, we can click on it. And then so at the moment, we've clicked on the reconditioning group in January 24, and it will give us all the different episodes. So we can see age, we can see the impairment code, and we can also see the patient identifier. So this allows us to drill down, and we can do this on a number of their charts that can help us to show more information, and it may be more relevant for a few of the others than it is for this particular one here. The other thing that's worthwhile mentioning is we have a data zoom bar at the bottom here. So if you want to look at monthly data, but really you only wanted to look at the data from the current calendar year, I can zoom in and just have a look now at the data from January 24, but still view it in that monthly time frame. And then likewise, I can pull this out. And obviously, as time goes on and there's more and more months in here, you can zoom in and zoom out to whatever your preference may be, whether that's looking at the data from a monthly or a quarterly point of view. The last thing to mention on this chart here is across the bottom, you can see all the different impairment groups, and obviously there's a number of them, so you can scroll through and see all the different options there. But if you hover over any of these, we don't have any spine, let's go for stroke. If you hover over any of these, it will highlight that particular group, but you can also deselect that group. So if you click on any of these, they'll be deselected from that particular chart. And again, we can show on some of the other charts why that might be meaningful or useful to look at data in that way. But that's essentially how this first chart works. Moving on to the right, this chart is a new one that is specific to Inreach. So in this chart, we're looking at the total number of episodes by discharge pathway. So AROC has grouped the Inreach data into different discharge pathways, determining on what their clinical exit from the program is. So you can see here in the teal, it's patients that are discharged back into the community. In purple, it's patients that have moved on for further rehab in an inpatient rehab setting, in subacute setting. The yellow is those going back to acute. And lastly, the orange here is those going elsewhere or other. If you're not sure about how we work these out, there's a little pop out here that explains that these discharge pathways are determined by the mode of episode end. And I'm not going to read these out to you right now, but you can see there the particular modes of episode ends and which group they relate to. And that will be relevant for some of the other analysis that we see in the outcomes over time group, tab, as well as in the Inreach PDF reports that will be released later this year. But again, this chart has similar functions to what we saw in the previous one, in that we can look at it in a percentage view, a chart view, or we can also look at it at a CSV file. But I guess this where it may become more relevant to select or deselect different groups. So for instance, if you wanted to look at the number of patients from your Inreach program that went back to acute that didn't finish their rehab with you, you could deselect these other ones and then quite clearly see the numbers, or alternatively the percentages of patients who returned back to acute in any of those given time periods. Again, similar to the other chart here, we have the data zoom bar, which can zoom in or out in terms of the data that we're looking at as well. Moving down the last two charts here, we have one on access to rehab. So you'll see here this one, given that the nature, it's looking at days as opposed to numbers. We don't have a percentage option here, but you can view the table, the data as a table or as a download to CSV. And the different colours here represent different time periods. So the red here is the time from the patient's acute admission date to the time that they were referred to the Inreach rehab service. Where there isn't an acute missing date, an acute admission date in the data, we will use the injury date as a proxy. The navy here is looking at from the time from referral to assessment, the purple from assessment to when they're deemed clinically rehab ready, and then the yellow is from rehab ready to rehab start. So again, if you're interested in potentially looking at just what are our wait times, what's our waiting list once patients are ready, you could deselect these other options and just look at that time from when patients are deemed ready for the Inreach program, and then the average number of days until they start. Likewise, if you saw a particular time frame that looked longer than normal, so for instance, the time to referral here into June, you could drill down and look at those episodes and those particular dates that are within, that are falling within that. Within this, AROC will also, the dashboard will also alert you if we think there's a potential error within these dates, and that occurs when there's a date or two dates that are more than 365 days apart. Those episodes are flagged in here as potentially being a data entry error. The last chart here on our overview is looking at data completeness. This chart is looking at, of all the data items that should have been received, how many of them came in at 100%, and that will fall into the green. Between 95 and 99% in the yellow, 90 to 94% in the red, or less than 90% in the black. So again, this is just looking at, did the data come through? So this is where a chart where it's quite feasible to aim for and to expect to see 100% of data collected. That being said, there are obviously times when that may not be the case. And what this allows you to do again is to drill down and look at, well, what are the particular data items that we're missing? So you can see for this particular set of data, there were episodes here that were missing the data of the multidisciplinary rehab plan, comorbidity data, complication data, and then also some of the frailty data for reconditioning. So this may be a chart that you may wish to look at more on a monthly, or group monthly or yearly, and then look at, is there a particular issue with any particular data item that we're consistently missing across the course of a year. The other thing to remember here is that this is looking at proportions. So you can see for some of these items here have fallen into the black. It may only be a couple of episodes where they've been missed, but if they're not relevant, so these ones are for amputees up the top here, or I think they're all for amputees actually. If they're not relevant for many of your episodes, proportionally, they may be collected still at quite low levels. Okay, let's just go back to monthly data. So that's a quick run through our overview tab. If we move over now to our outcomes over time tab, we have 3 different line charts here. So the first one is looking at median admission FIM, and then median FIM change, and lastly, median length of stay. So median admission FIM is going to give you a bit of a gauge on terms of the level of functioning of patients as they commence rehab in your Inreach program. You'll see the different colours here, which we saw on the previous tab as well. So we've got the teal, discharged community group, the purple, the group going on to further inpatient rehab in subacute, the yellow back to acute, and then all groups is putting all those 3 groups together. So again, if it's a little bit messy here and you really just want to get an overall picture of all of them, you can get rid of the other colours and just look at what the total for all those groups together may look like in terms of your median admission FIM. Again, if you see something that looks particularly different, so you can see here that the back to acute median admission FIM was quite low, you can pull that up and look at those particular episodes and what their admission FIMs were in that given time period. Also similar to before, we have the data zoom. But one thing that's different to these charts is when we go up here, we can actually view them as a box and whisker plot. Now, these are not everyone's cup of tea in terms of these type of plots looking at them, but some people do rather enjoy them. So they're there as an option for people to view it. And what it does allow you to see is the distribution of your data over that time period rather than just a particular median. If you're not quite sure what this is showing or how to interpret these, again, there's a little pop out here that goes through an explanation of the box plots or the box and whisker plots and what they mean and how to interpret them further. Again, here, though, we also have the option to view in a table and to download in CSV like we did on all the other charts we saw earlier. So scrolling down, the next 2 essentially function the same, but we're looking at different data. So now we're looking at median FIM change. So again, this is just going to be the median change between the admission FIM and the discharge FIM over the given time period. And again, you can see it amongst those different groups and to see whether there's potentially a difference within those groups or whether there's any trends in any one of those groups, or again, you might just want to look at what the trend may be over time. I don't think I've mentioned it, but as you can see in all these charts, you do have the ends across the bottom, which is worthwhile looking at. And you can see in this dummy data, there isn't quite as much data in June or July. So when we're looking at this median FIM change going up, we just need to keep in mind that there's only a few episodes there. And that may also be relevant when you're looking at your own data, depending on the flow of data that you get coming through in any given month or time period. But again, that's also the benefit of potentially looking at your data quarterly. If you feel like your data is, your numbers are too small to look at it in a monthly process, you can look at it over time, over quarters, which will give you obviously bigger numbers to work with. The last one down the bottom, median length of stay. So again here, it functions the same as the previous ones. We have the 4 different groups in the different colours, and we're looking at the length of stay in Inreach. And it's worthwhile noting that particularly, say, for this purple group, where we're looking at length of stay for patients who are going on to subacute rehab, this may well be affected by your availability to source and get beds in your common inpatient subacute units that you refer on to. So this allows you, I guess, to go back and look at, well, if there's flow issues out into subacute, how this may potentially look in terms of your length of stay in some of these groups. And what it might also show is that if we go back to the overview group, you may actually have an increase in the proportions in this teal group because you're getting more people into the community because you've got less flow through into your inpatient unit. Like the other charts on this over time, we can look at view it as box and whisker, and we can also drill down from the box and whisker as well into the different groups there. So you can see here, because I've clicked on the all groups, I'm seeing all the different discharge pathways coming up there. So our third and final tab across the top here allows you to download our reports. So what you'll see across, there's two options here. You can download a report to a PDF or to a HTML. It will download the report based on what your current filters are set at. So what you'll notice here, it just reminds you what you've got here. So what report name, what time frame, so currently it's quarterly, and also what the start date is and what impairment groups are included. So at the moment we see all numbers here from 1 to 20 included because all the impairment groups have been selected. But if I was to only want to look at stroke, once I update my filters, you'll see here now I've only got impairment group 1, which is the stroke group. If you're not 100% sure what the numbers are in terms of which applies to which group, they are in order here, but you can also find them in your on your AROC, the data collection form on the back where it has the impairment codes. That'll give you the impairment code groups there as well. But let's just put all the data back in so we can just have a quick look of what the reports look like. So whether you use HTML or PDF may depend on what you're going to use the report for. So I might start with downloading the HTML report first. You can see it's just popped up here. The benefit of the HTML report is that there is still some interactive components embedded within that report. So you can see the hover functions still work within here. As do I go down to this one, as do if I wanted to remove things. So depending on who you're showing this report to and how you're using it, that may be quite useful to be able to show some of these interactive functions and to include or exclude different groups. But what you can see here is you get all the charts both by number and by proportion, as well as the table. So all the data and the information is there. The PDF report will look the same, but it won't have that interactive, as much interactiveness to it. But what you can do once it's still just generating, give it a moment.
Just try again, Andrew.
Let's just try that again. There we go. Within here, you can skip down to different parts, but what you notice is being a PDF, you can't deselect or hover. Those hover functions won't be available there. The last thing that's I just want to point out here is there is a Save Settings button. So this will save your filter settings. So if it makes most sense for you to look at your data quarterly and you have that set up, or then that will, and you save, then that will always be the case when you come back in. Or what might be relevant, if your service didn't start collecting data until January 24, you can change that start date to January 24, click Save Settings, and then every time you log in, that will be the start date. You won't have to keep resetting that for each time you come through. But that is all of, I guess, what I wanted to take you through today.